Welcome to Devotionary, where we make the Bible accessible and applicable. It seems a bit odd that when David compiled the list of his mighty men, he conspicuously left off one name, that of his long-term friend and commander of his army, Joab. There's no doubt that David and Joab didn't always see eye to eye, but that David would leave this one man out of his list of those who would perform mighty deeds in his behalf shows that David had never gotten over Joab's insubordination. But the truth is, Joab was the most likely candidate for a best friend that David had. He was willing to speak up. He wasn't afraid to point out David's faults and to call him on the carpet when he thought it necessary. Joab wasn't a fair-weather friend, and he wasn't the type to ply David with false flattery. He loved him enough to say the tough things. But as we'll see in 2 Samuel 23, verses 24 through 39, Joab's name is nowhere to be found. Chapter 23 closes with a list of 37 men. Several things should jump out at us. First of all is the inclusion of the name of Uriah the Hittite, the man David had exposed to enemy fire on the front lines in order that he might be killed, and so that David might take his wife, Bathsheba, as his own. And all of this had been done to cover up David's affair with her and the pregnancy that had resulted from it. While Uriah had been killed early on in David's reign, he's recognized here at the end of David's life as one of the 30. We don't know exactly what that title entails and what the responsibilities were for each of these men, but we do know that they were considered men of distinction. Even David had to admit that Uriah, though long dead, was a man of integrity, having refused to give in to David's attempt to get him to sleep with his wife while his fellow soldiers were battling the enemy. Uriah had turned down David's counsel to enjoy the comforts of home, instead choosing to sleep at the doorstep of the king's palace, and he willingly returned to the front lines, unknowingly carrying his own death warrant in the form of a letter from David to Joab, commanding that Uriah be exposed to deadly enemy fire on the front lines and left to die. Another thing that should jump out at you is the variety of the men in this list. Some were Israelites, others were not. You have groups listed like the Paltites, Hushathites, Ahahites, Arbathites, Shaalbanites, Hararites, Gilonites, Arbites, Gadites, Ammonites, Ithrites, and Hittites. We don't know much about many of these people groups, but it reveals the ethnic diversity of David's mighty men. David's kingdom and his army were multiracial and cross-cultural. These men loved and supported David. They were willing to sacrifice their lives for him if necessary. We're not given any specifics regarding the actions of these men or how they had come to be included in the 30, but they were special to David. They had proved faithful to him over the years. No doubt there were some like Uriah who had given their lives for David. Others had fought for him or given him counsel and advice. They had diverse backgrounds and different duties, but they all shared a common bond with David. Conspicuously absent from the list is Joab, the longtime commander of David's armies, and the man who had stood beside him all the years of his life. Joab had disobeyed David and killed Absalom, David's son. He had also killed Abner and Amasa against the wishes of David. So he's not included in David's inner circle, but his armor-bearer is. An important character quality of a true friend is that of loyalty. These men had proven themselves loyal and dedicated to David. Joab had as well, but he had also shown himself to be blunt and brutally honest with David. He loved him enough to call him out. When David was stuck in a state of perpetual mourning over the death of Absalom, it had been Joab who called him out and demanded that he act like a king or face the loss of his kingdom. David needed to hear what Joab had to say. It seems that there were times when Joab did what David was either afraid or reluctant to do. That too is an important character quality of a true friend. Someone who always agrees with you or overlooks your faults and sins is not someone who truly loves you. Solomon, the son of David, would record the following sayings in his book of Proverbs. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than kisses from an enemy. Proverbs 27, verse 6. In the end, people appreciate honest criticism far more than flattery. Proverbs 28:23. The truth is, we all need someone like Joab in our life. It's always great to be surrounded by those who look up to you and who are willing to do whatever it takes to make you successful. But sometimes we just need one individual who is willing to say the hard things and to hold us to a higher standard. Joab and David didn't always get along. They didn't always agree. But Joab had proven himself faithful to David time and time again. and he loved David too much to watch him do nothing, risking his kingdom by losing the respect of his people. David had no shortage of faithful followers, brave companions, and dedicated servants, but there were times when he could have used a few more men like Joab in his life. What kind of friend are you? Are you steadfast and faithful, always there when your friends need you? Are you willing to risk losing a friend by speaking up and calling them out over their sins? Joab was far from perfect. He had his own struggles with anger, impulsiveness, and seeking revenge. But he loved David greatly, so much so that he was willing to risk David's wrath by standing up to David when he knew that David was wrong. A godly leader who has followers is fortunate, but a godly leader who has faithful and honest friends is blessed.